The engagement ring was already on my sister's finger when I walked into the brunch, but she had never said yes. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the flowers, not the silver trays, not my mother's practiced smile, not the pastor sitting beside the punch bowl, like this was a blessing instead of a transaction. I noticed my sister's hand under the table, trembling so hard the diamond kept flashing against the white tablecloth. My name is Mara Whitlock. I was 35 years old that morning, and my little sister Elodie was 20. By noon, our parents expected her to smile, thank everyone, and accept a wedding date chosen to erase a rumor. By 12:47, I placed one sealed envelope in the middle of the table, asked one question, and watched two old families realize they had built an entire marriage on fear. Let me take you back to Magnolia Harbor, Alabama, the kind of Gulf Coast town that looks charming in postcards and suffocating when you are born inside it. Magnolia Harbor has pastel houses, church bells, shrimp boats, a historic square, and enough gossip to bury a person alive before breakfast. In that town, reputation is not something you earn. It is something your family guards, polishes, hides, and sometimes sacrifices people to keep. My father, Edwin Whitlock, owned Whitlock Funeral Home, the oldest family business in the county. His name was on the sign, on the church donor wall, on the Rotary Club programs, and on every handshake that mattered. My mother, Celeste, treated our last name like a fragile vase she had been ordered to carry across a room full of enemies. She wore pearls to the grocery store. She sent handwritten thank you notes for casseroles. She remembered who sat where at every wedding for 20 years. And she believed there was no problem so painful that appearances could not be arranged around it. I left Magnolia Harbor at 18 and never moved back. I live in Mobile now, 90 minutes away, in a small apartment above a bakery, where the mornings smell like cinnamon instead of funeral flowers. I work as a legal assistant for a nonprofit that helps women leave bad marriages, unsafe homes, and families that confuse control with love. That job taught me something my childhood never did. A quiet yes can still be fear. A pretty dress can still be a cage. And a family meeting can sometimes be a trial where the accused is never allowed to speak. My sister Elodie was the reason I still answered my mother's calls. She was 12 years younger than me, soft-voiced, artistic, the type of girl who apologized when someone else stepped on her foot. She wanted to study marine biology. She loved tide pools, old aquariums, and drawing tiny sea creatures in the margins of church bulletins. She was never rebellious. She was never reckless. She was simply gentle in a town that punished gentleness by calling it obedience. On the night everything started, my phone rang at 10:46. My mother never called after 9 unless someone was dead or someone had embarrassed her. I answered in the dark, already sitting up before I said hello. She did not greet me. She said, "Your sister has created a situation." Those were her exact words, not "your sister is hurt," not "your sister needs you," a situation. I asked what happened. My mother exhaled sharply, the way she did when she believed the truth was beneath her dignity. "There's a photograph," she said, "and people are talking." In Magnolia Harbor, that sentence is enough to change the weather. I asked what photograph. She said Elodie had been seen leaving the Blue Heron Inn at 1:30 in the morning with a young man. Someone had taken a blurry picture from across the parking lot. By morning, it was being shown around the church office, then the salon, then my father's funeral home, where people are supposed to come grieving, but often leave informed. I asked if anyone had asked Elodie what actually happened. My mother went silent. That silence told me more than her answer would have. Finally, she said, "What happened matters less than what everyone believes happened." I closed my eyes. I could almost see her standing in the formal dining room, polishing a silver serving spoon that did not need polishing, turning panic into presentation. I asked to speak to Elodie. My mother said she was resting. I asked again. Her voice hardened. "Mara, we are handling it." I knew that phrase. In my family, handling it meant finding the version of truth that looked best from the street. I drove to Magnolia Harbor the next morning. The whole way down Highway 98, I kept replaying the little I knew. A blurry photograph, a hotel, a young man, talk, and my sister, somewhere in that house, being managed instead of heard. When I pulled into town, the bay was glittering like nothing bad had ever happened there. The shrimp boats rocked at the dock. The church steeple rose above the live oaks. My father's black Cadillac was parked outside the funeral home, shining under the sign with our name in gold, Whitlock. In Magnolia Harbor, that name opened doors, closed mouths, and apparently now demanded a sacrifice. I stopped at Miller's Market for coffee. The cashier, Miss Brenda, had known me since I had braces. She looked at me, looked away, and said, "Morning, Mara," in the careful tone people use when they know too much and want credit for saying nothing. That was when I knew the rumor had already grown legs. By the time I reached my parents' house, there were fresh flowers on the porch and 2 extra cars in the driveway. My mother opened the door in a cream blouse and pearls. She looked calm. That frightened me more than if she had been crying. Calm meant she had chosen a plan. The real story came from Elodie later, in pieces, but it was simple. Her roommate's cousin, Tessa, had called her crying after a fight with her boyfriend at the Blue Heron Inn. Tessa was drunk, scared, and stranded. Elodie drove there to pick her up. The young man in the photo was not sneaking out with my sister. He was the hotel night clerk helping Elodie get Tessa into the car because Tessa could barely stand. Elodie drove Tessa home, stayed until she fell asleep, then came back alone. That was it, a frightened girl helping another frightened girl. But in Magnolia Harbor, truth moves like an old woman with a cane, and gossip moves like a hurricane. By breakfast, Elodie had been caught. By lunch, she had spent the night. By evening, my parents believed her future had to be repaired before the rumor became permanent. I sat at the kitchen table while my mother told me this, not as if it were tragic, but as if it were inconvenient. My father stood by the window in his funeral director's suit, his hands folded behind his back, watching the street as though neighbors might be hiding in the azaleas. "People are asking questions," he said, "at the funeral home, at church. Even Judge Halpern mentioned it." Judge Halpern mattered because my father was quietly campaigning for a seat on the county ethics board, a position that came with no salary and enormous local importance. My mother mattered because she cared about who whispered. My father mattered because he cared who heard. I asked, "Where's Elodie?" My mother said, "Upstairs, getting dressed." I asked, "For what?" She smoothed her napkin even though she was not eating. "The Bellamys are coming at 11. I stared at her. "Why?" My father turned from the window. "Because an engagement will settle this." I thought I'd misheard him. An engagement to who? My mother said, "Preston Bellamy." She said the name the way other people say solution. The Bellamys owned Bellamy Coastal Bank. Preston was 28, handsome in the polished, empty way men can be when no one has ever required them to develop a soul. His mother, Lorraine Bellamy, chaired 2 charities and ruined people with compliments. His father played golf with my father and collected favors like coins. I had known Preston my whole life. He was not cruel in the loud way. He was worse, he was careless because the world had always cleaned up after him. I said, "Elodie is 20. My father said, "Old enough?" I said, "She wants college." My mother said, "College can wait." I said, "Did she say yes?" The room went quiet in a way I will never forget. My mother looked at me with pity, as if I were embarrassing myself by asking the only question that mattered. Then she said, "Sometimes girls need their mothers to know what is best before they do." I stood up so fast my chair scraped the tile. That is not an answer. My father's face tightened. "In this family, we do not let one mistake destroy a life." I said, "Her life is the one you are about to destroy." He looked at me then, really looked, and for 1 second I saw the man beneath the funeral director. Not evil, not even angry, just terrified of losing the respect he had mistaken for love. "This family has a name," he said. "A name is not worth more than your daughter," I said. My mother's voice turned sharp. "Easy for you to say. You left." There it was, the old sentence. The family crime I had committed by surviving elsewhere. I left. Therefore, I didn't understand. I left. Therefore, I had no vote. I left. Therefore, Elodie belonged to them. I went upstairs without asking permission. Elodie's room still had blue walls and shells lined on the windowsill. She was sitting on the edge of the bed in a pale yellow dress, her hair curled, her face blank in that careful way people look when they are trying not to fall apart. The ring was already on her finger. Not a promise. A claim. It was too big for her, an oval diamond sliding around every time she moved. She kept twisting it with her thumb over and over like she could rub herself out of the moment. I sat beside her and asked, "Did you agree to this?" She looked at the floor. "Mama says it will make people stop." That is not what I asked. Her eyes filled. I told her I didn't want to marry him. Her voice broke on Mary like the word itself was too large to hold. She said I had already made things hard enough. I felt something inside me go still. Not hot, not explosive. Still, the way the air feels before lightning. "Ellie," I said gently, using the name only I called her. "Do you want Preston?" She shook her head once, fast, like even that might be overheard. "Do you want this wedding?" Another shake. "What do you want?" She started crying then, silent tears sliding down her face. "I want to go to Dauphin Island for the summer research program. I want to go to school. I want everyone to stop looking at me like I'm dirty." I put my hand over hers and stopped the twisting ring. "You are not dirty," she whispered. "They keep saying if I fight this, I will ruin Daddy." That was the heart of it. Not Elodie's mistake, not a photograph. My father's board seat, my mother's place in town, the Bellamy's advantage, a young woman being asked to pay the family's reputation debt with her entire future. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. My sister flinched. I did not tell her I could fix it. I know better than to promise rescue before you know where the exits are. But I made myself a promise while sitting beside her on that bed. I had left Magnolia Harbor once because I thought leaving was the only way to survive. I would not leave my sister behind to be married off like a correction. The Bellamys arrived like a weather system. Lorraine Bellamy came first, white linen, pearls, perfume, sharp enough to announce wealth from the hallway. Preston followed, scrolling on his phone, barely looking up until he saw Elodie. When he did, his expression was not love. It was appraisal, a man checking whether a package arrived undamaged. We sat in the formal dining room under the chandelier my mother only lit for holidays and negotiations. There were deviled eggs, shrimp salad, little cucumber sandwiches, and lemon cake arranged as if food could make coercion polite. Lorraine complimented my mother's china. My father poured sweet tea. Preston talked about his boat. No one asked Elodie a single question. Not about school, not about the rumor, not about whether she wanted to become a Bellamy. At one point I said, Elodie has been accepted into a marine biology summer program. Lorraine smiled without warmth. How sweet. But young wives find new priorities. Preston laughed. She can look at fish from the boat. My sister stared at her plate, her thumb turned the ring. My mother smiled like this was charming. I started taking mental notes. It is what I do at work when a room gets dangerous. Who speaks for whom? Who benefits? Who avoids specifics? Who uses soft words to cover hard things? After lunch, the men walked onto the porch. My mother and Lorraine went into the kitchen. I followed with plates because people always forget the helper is listening. Over the sink, in low voices, I heard the part no one had said out loud. The Bellamys wanted my father's waterfront parcel behind the funeral home. A narrow strip of land developers had been circling for years. My father had refused every offer because selling family land looked greedy. But if the land became part of a family arrangement, if Preston and Elodie married and the Bellamys invested in their future, then it could move quietly. Lorraine said Preston needed stability after the Daphne situation. My mother asked if that was truly handled. Lorraine said the girl's parents had accepted payment and the complaint would never become formal. I stood at the sink with a plate in my hand and understood the whole machine. Elodie's rumor was not the problem. It was the opportunity. The Bellamys needed to make Preston look respectable before another story surfaced. My father needed the Bellamys' support for his board seat. My mother needed the town to stop whispering. The waterfront land sweetened the deal. My sister was not being rescued, she was being traded. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom with my laptop open and thought like the legal assistant I am. I could not simply drag Elodie to Mobile. Fear follows people. Shame follows faster. If she left without believing she had the right to leave, my parents would call, cry, threaten, plead, and she would return. I could not fight the whole town. I could not prove a rumor false to people who preferred it useful. And I could not stop a wedding by, yelling at parents who had mistaken volume for disrespect and silence for virtue. So I asked the only question that matters when a family tries to turn pressure into paperwork. What makes a marriage real? Not socially real. Legally real. I searched Alabama marriage law until the words on the screen became clear enough to breathe around. Marriage is not created by parents, not by neighbors, not by family reputation, not by a ring forced onto a trembling hand. In Alabama, the marriage process requires both parties to sign a marriage certificate and have it notarized. 2 adults, their signatures, their sworn decision. No parent signs for a grown daughter. No mother's fear replaces consent. no father's reputation becomes a legal vow. The law, plain and ordinary and ignored by everyone downstairs, required what my family had never given Elodie, her own willing signature. The next morning, I called my boss, Anita Rhodes, who had spent 27 years helping women unwind what families pressured them into. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Do not threaten them with the law like you are swinging a bat. Put the truth in the room and let the people protecting the arrangement hear the risk clearly." She explained that if coercion could be shown, any marriage built on it would be vulnerable. Maybe not automatically erased, maybe not simple, but vulnerable. And if there was evidence that the families knew the bride did not consent, then every witness to that pressure became part of the story. The people who care most about appearances, Anita said, are usually terrified of documented truth. That sentence became my plan. I did not need to shout. I needed the right room, the right witnesses, and one question nobody could answer honestly without exposing the arrangement. The engagement brunch was scheduled for the following Saturday at the Magnolia Harbor Yacht Club. My mother called it a family blessing. That meant the pastor would be there, the Bellamy's would be there, several important neighbors would be there, and my father's board supporters would be there. A room carefully chosen to make Elodie feel surrounded, a room carefully chosen to turn pressure into celebration. My mother thought witnesses would trap my sister. She did not realize witnesses could also free her. I went to see Pastor Graham 2 days before the brunch. He had baptized Elodie and presided over half the marriages in town. He was a gentle man with tired eyes and a dangerous habit of avoiding conflict by calling it patience. We sat in his office under a painting of a lighthouse. I did not accuse anyone. I simply asked whether he could bless an engagement if he believed the bride-to-be was afraid to refuse it. He folded his hands and looked at the window for a long time. "Marriage should be entered with a whole heart," he said, "not a cornered one." I nodded. I did not ask for more. A conscience does not always need instructions. Sometimes it only needs to be woken. The night before the brunch, I gave my mother one last private chance. We stood in the kitchen while she polished serving spoons for an event not even held in her house. I said calmly, "If Elodie is pressured into this, it will not stay quiet, not legally, not socially, not morally. You can stop this now." My mother did not look at me. She kept polishing. "You always were dramatic. Ask her what she wants," I said. "I know what she wants," my mother answered. "She wants this to be over." That is not the same as wanting Preston. Her hand stilled for half a second, then continued. "A wedding gives people something better to talk about." I said, "You are not fixing a rumor. You are selling your daughter to change the headline." She slapped the spoon onto the counter. "Do not embarrass us tomorrow." That was the moment I knew she had understood everything and chosen the room anyway. So I chose it too. On the morning of the brunch, I found Elodie in her bedroom, wearing a pale blue dress and the same terrified stillness. I handed her a blank card and a pen. She looked confused. I said, "Write what you would say if nobody could punish you for telling the truth." Her hand shook. "Are you going to show it?" "No, it is not for them. It is for you." She sat at her desk and wrote for several minutes. When she finished, she folded the card once and held it in her palm. I did not ask to read it. She needed one piece of truth that belonged to her alone. Before we left, I said, "I am not going to speak for you. I am going to open a door. You decide whether to walk through it." She looked at me like she wanted to believe doors existed. The yacht club glittered in the late morning sun, all white railings, polished floors, blue water beyond the windows, and women pretending not to stare. My mother had chosen the room perfectly. It looked respectable from every angle. Round tables covered in white linen, flowers in glass vases, silver pitchers of tea, a framed view of the harbor behind the head table, as if even the water had agreed to witness. The Bellamy's moved through the room like owners. Lorraine kissed cheeks. Preston shook hands and smiled for older men. My father looked younger than I had seen him in years, bright with relief, already imagining the rumor buried and the board seat secured. Elodie sat beside Preston, small and pale, the ring loose on her finger, the folded card hidden under her napkin. Pastor Graham sat near the front, quiet, watching more than speaking. I kept the sealed envelope in my bag. Inside was a blank Alabama marriage certificate printout, a short written explanation of the consent requirement, and a typed timeline of what Elodie had told me. She said no, the ring was placed anyway, the wedding was planned anyway, and the brunch was being used to announce what she had not freely chosen. It was not secret evidence, it was not a trick. It was the truth organized so nobody could pretend it was missed. Brunch began with polite laughter and shrimp plates. Lorraine gave a speech about old families and new beginnings. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin at exactly the right moment. Then my father stood. He tapped his glass. The room quieted. He thanked everyone for coming. He spoke about faith, family, storms weathered together, and the blessing of two respected houses joining hands. He never said rumor. He did not have to. Every person in that room understood what was being washed in public. Then he turned toward Elodie. "Sweetheart," he said warmly, using the voice he saved for crowds, "why don't you stand and say a few words about this happy day?" Elodie froze. Preston glanced at her like she had missed a cue. My mother's smile sharpened. Lorraine tilted her head with mild impatience. The room waited. Elodie pushed her chair back and stood. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. Her fingers found the ring and began turning it. Once, twice, 3 times. That was my moment. I stood beside her, quietly enough that my chair barely made a sound. "Before Elodie speaks," I said, "I have one question." My father's face changed instantly. "Mara." One word, warning, command, pleading, all dressed as authority. I smiled gently. "Just one question, Daddy." The room shifted toward me, hungry and alarmed. I reached into my bag, took out the sealed envelope, and placed it in the center of the head table. I did not slam it, I did not wave it. I set it down as if it were a document in a conference room, because that is all it was. Then I looked directly at Lorraine Bellamy. Not my mother, not my father, Lorraine, the business mind, the one who would understand risk before shame. "Mrs. Bellamy," I said, "when Preston and Elodie complete their marriage certificate, they both have to sign it themselves. Their own names, their own sworn decision. No parent can sign for an adult daughter. No family reputation can sign in her place." Lorraine's smile stayed on, but her eyes cooled. "I beg your pardon?" I kept my voice calm. I work with women who have been pressured into life-changing decisions by families who call pressure protection. So I want to ask this clearly in front of everyone who has gathered to bless this engagement. Has anyone in either family made a plan for what happens if Elodie later states that she did not freely consent to this marriage? The room went still. Somewhere near the windows, a fork touched a plate. Pastor Graham lowered his eyes. My mother whispered, "Stop." I did not. Because if a bride is afraid, if she has said no privately, if a ring was placed on her hand before she truly agreed, and if a room full of respected people watched everyone celebrate that pressure as if it were love, then the wedding does not bury the story. It creates a bigger one. Lorraine's face changed first. Not guilt, calculation. She looked at the envelope, then at Elodie's white face, then at the guests. I could see the math moving behind her eyes. A marriage meant to quiet one rumor could become a public legal mess. A coerced daughter-in-law, a notarized certificate questioned, a pastor uneasy, witnesses everywhere, the Bellamy name tied not to respectability, but to pressure. I said the final line softly. "So my question is simple. Are you comfortable building your son's future on a signature everyone here now knows may not be free?" No one spoke. The silence was not empty. It was full of people realizing they could no longer unknow what had been said. My father's face went gray. My mother gripped the edge of the table. Preston looked irritated, not frightened, which told me everything about him. Lorraine folded her napkin slowly. "Preston," she said. He blinked. "Mother?" She stood. "We will not proceed under these circumstances." My mother gasped. "Lorraine, surely?" Lorraine looked at her with a coldness so clean it almost impressed me. I said, "We will not proceed." Preston stood, confused and angry. "This is ridiculous." Lorraine turned to him. "Be quiet." The Great Bellamy rescue collapsed in less than 30 seconds, not because anyone discovered compassion, but because risk finally outweighed reward. Sometimes that is how you save someone. Not by finding the goodness in powerful people, but by making the consequence of harm visible enough that even selfish people step back. My mother came apart next. She rose from her chair, cheeks flushed, voice shaking. "Do you understand what you have done?" she said to me, though the whole room could hear. "After everything we arranged, after all the talk, do you know what people will say about this family now?" There it was. the God she had served her whole life. What people will say? I felt strangely peaceful. I looked at her, at the pearls, the perfect hair, the trembling mouth of a woman who thought public shame was worse than private cruelty. Yes, I said. They will say you tried to trade your daughter for silence. A sound moved through the room. Not loud, a collective breath. My mother stared at me like I had slapped her. How dare you? No, I said, still calm. How dare you put a ring on her hand before you asked for her answer? That landed, not on my mother. She was too defended for truth to enter quickly. It landed on everyone else, the neighbors, the pastor, my father's supporters, the women who had come to see a rumor cleaned up and were now watching the cleaning solution burn through the tablecloth. My father sat down heavily. He looked at Elodie for the first time that morning, as if she were not a family problem, but his child. Too late, maybe, but looking. Then Elodie moved. She reached under her napkin and took out the folded card. Her hands were shaking. I did not touch her. I did not whisper. This part had to be hers, or it meant nothing. She unfolded the card, looked at it once, then folded it again. She did not read from it. She did not need to. She had already heard herself when she wrote it. She pulled the ring off her finger. It took a second because her hands were damp and trembling. Then she placed it on the table beside my envelope. A tiny click, small sound, whole life changing. I never said yes, she said. Her voice cracked, then steadied. I told Mama I didn't want this. I told her I wanted school. I told her I was scared. Nobody listened. My mother whispered, Elodie. Elodie looked at her, crying now but standing straight. No, that is my answer. No. Pastor Graham stood slowly. His face was pale. I cannot bless a marriage the bride does not freely seek, he said. And I will not? That was it. The arrangement ended in the room designed to announce it. Not with screaming, not with police, not with a dramatic rescue. It ended because one frightened girl finally said no where everyone could hear her, and the people who had ignored her private answer could not survive her public one. Lorraine and Preston left first. The Bellamys did not say goodbye. My mother sat down like someone had cut the strings holding her upright. My father stared at the ring on the table. The guests avoided each other's eyes, already preparing the new version of the story. The true version, the one my mother had accidentally invited them to witness. I took Elodie's hand and we walked out past the flowers, past the tea pitchers, past the harbor view, into the blinding Alabama sunlight. She started crying halfway down the steps, then laughing, then crying again. I unlocked my car and we sat inside with the engine off while the water flashed beyond the parking lot. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she leaned her head against the window and whispered, I thought saying no would kill me. I said, it didn't. She gave a small broken laugh. It felt like it might. I reached across the console and took her hand. That is how they kept you from saying it. The fallout came exactly the way I expected and not at all how my mother feared. The original rumor about the Blue Heron Inn died within a week because it was too small to compete with what had happened at the yacht club. The new story was bigger and sharper. The Whitlocks had tried to marry off their daughter to save face. The Bellamys had backed out when consent became inconvenient. Pastor Graham had refused to bless it. Mrs. Calhoun from the library told half the town she had never seen anything so shameful. And for once, she did not mean the young. Woman in the center of the rumor. My father lost the ethics board seat before the vote, not officially because of Elodie. Officially, he withdrew for family reasons. Everyone knew what that meant. The waterfront land stayed in the family, which brought him no joy because now it looked less like heritage and more like evidence. Preston disappeared to Birmingham for a while. Lorraine stopped returning my mother's calls. The Bellamys were not ruined, of course. Families like that rarely are. But they were inconvenienced, and in their world, inconvenience feels like injury. 2 nights after the brunch, my mother told me a truth I had never heard. We were alone in the kitchen. No pearls, no polished spoons, no audience. She looked older without performance holding her up. She said when she was 18, a rumor followed her too. Nothing serious, nothing true, but enough to make her father panic. A quick engagement to my father had saved her. That was the word she used. Saved. She had spent 30 years believing a forced door was shelter because it had been the only door anyone opened for her. I listened. I understood more than I wanted to. Pain passed down through a family can start wearing the costume of wisdom. But understanding my mother did not excuse her. I said, "You were hurt, and then you tried to make the same wound look like protection." She cried then, quietly. Not the dramatic crying she used when she wanted sympathy, real crying, the kind that embarrasses the person doing it, but she still did not say sorry to Elodie, not then. So I did not wrap the moment in forgiveness it had not earned. Elodie came to Mobile with me the next week. She said it would be temporary. It has been 8 months. She started her marine biology program. She works weekends at the aquarium gift shop and sends me pictures of injured sea turtles like they are celebrities. She still calls our parents on Sundays sometimes. I do too, though not every Sunday anymore. The house in Magnolia Harbor is not closed forever, but it has a rule now. A simple one. No is a complete sentence. If my parents want Elodie at their table, they have to accept that sentence without debate, punishment, or rearrangement. Until they can, she has a key to my apartment. Sometimes I think about that ring sitting on the white tablecloth beside my envelope. It looked so small once she took it off. All that fear, all those plans, all those families and speeches and land deals and reputations. And in the end, the object itself was just a ring too big for her hand. That is the thing about control. It looks enormous while everyone agrees to pretend it is love. The moment one person stops pretending, it shrinks. My sister did not need me to save her by speaking over her. She needed one open door, one public truth, and enough silence afterward to hear her own voice. That day taught me something I carry into every hard room now. A family name that needs a daughter's consent erased in order to survive was never honorable. A wedding that requires fear is not a wedding, and a quiet girl saying no can be louder than every polished speech in the room. That is my story. One blurry photograph, one forced ring, one sealed envelope, and one question nobody could answer with you telling the truth. If there is someone in your life whose silence everyone calls agreement, ask them gently what they actually want, then be brave enough to listen when the answer ruins the room.